Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good. You're already in the spirit. Speaking of which, don't touch the spirits on the table, please. More on that in a moment. How many of you have never been to the National Press Club? I'm curious. I love that. Well, welcome to the National Press Club, the world's leading professional organization for journalists. My name is Jeff Ballou. I'm a producer for ABC News. I'm the 110th president of the National Press Club, so I served in 2017. It's my privilege and honor to have served, and at a few moments, the current president, Emily Wilkins of CNBC, will be up here to help moderate tonight's event. I'm here to sort of set the stage for tonight's proceedings. But before we get started, we have a few housekeeping notes. While we love for you to share what's happening on social media, and we really encourage you to do that, please silence your devices so that you don't inadvertently interrupt the program. Now, if you do wish to post on social media, you'll find the National Press Club has accounts on Facebook, on X, on Instagram. And so when you go there, please do so freely and use the hashtag NPCLive. For those watching on our live stream, yes, we are live tonight. Excuse me. Applause and other signs of approval or disapproval, we hope none of that tonight, may not be from journalists in the room, but from members of the public who are often invited to attend our programs. We will have time for questions, I promise you, because Fawn is anxious to take your questions tonight. I just left her. However, microphones will be circulating when the time comes, and for those of you who like the questions, Ms. Weaver, like I said, she's happy to take your questions, but we ask you, please keep them short and snappy and to the point so we can get as many questions in as time allows. And as I said, dear friends, here comes the most difficult request of all. I think I heard a phone just now. No, I'm not throwing you out. You have an elegantly placed tasting of Uncle Nearest whiskey in front of you. I beg of you, please refrain from drinking it until it's time for the official tasting led by Master Distiller Victoria Eady Butler, who is here tonight. Yes, a rare treat indeed. And please join me in thanking the club headliners team, leadership, past President Donna Lyman-Leger, she's not here tonight, past President Jen Judson, co-chair Lori Russo, and thanks to headliners team staff liaison Cecily Scott Martin, who did an amazing job whipping this all together tonight. There's a lot of moving parts and getting you all in here. Usually our wine dinners are about maybe 70 or 80 people. Y'all sold this out. So give yourselves a pat on the back for that. Now, also, I'd like to thank our National Press Club Executive Director, our Staff Executive Director, Didier Sallier, all the club staff and member volunteers that keep the lights on and make this place run smoothly as it has since 1908. And now, to get on with the program. We sit here on the eve of Juneteenth, a hard-won American commemoration that marks the moment 2 years after the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation that enslaved African Americans in Galveston, Texas, finally learned that they were free. Yet, for decades to come, that freedom would be marred by vicious Jim Crow segregation laws and systemic attacks by whites on their fellow black citizens. But through it all, many black people played important, often pivotal, but mostly unacknowledged roles in the economy and politics of the region. Hidden tales, many uncovered and unknown until recently, until people like Fawn Weaver got a hold of them. Fawn Weaver's journey towards becoming the first woman, first African American to run a $1 billion+ whiskey business. And that is history, folks. That begins in part of course here at the Press Club, with a journalist named Clay Risen, who wrote for the New York Times International Edition. And following that, an army of researchers popped up, and they spent 2,500 hours unearthing 10,000 documents and artifacts to bring the story of Uncle Nearest to the public conscience. A story that introduced us to his descendants, including Victoria Eady Butler, the first African-American woman to become a master distiller. So tonight, yes. So tonight, we are looking forward to hearing more from Fawn and Victoria about that journey and the hidden figures that quietly shaped our world today and that will go on to shape our future. Leading that discussion is the current National Press Club president, Emily Wilkins, a congressional correspondent for CNBC. So please join me in offering a warm welcome to Fawn Weaver, Victoria Eady Butler, and the 117th National Press Club president, Emily Wilkins.
At the National Press Club ever. So thank you for showing up and showing out and show how we do.
Fawn, thank you so much for being here this evening.
Yes.
I think we can all sit down. But I would be remiss if I did not immediately begin with a huge, can we just get a huge round of applause in here for Jeff Ballou? Jeff has been a mentor. He's been an inspiration to myself and many recent past presidents, and I'm sure future presidents here at the National Press Club. And really, none of us would be sitting here tonight if it was not for Jeff. Yeah. So Jeff, thank you so much.
Thank you. Jeff, was anybody in here at the Uncle Nearest house on the Vineyard? Yeah. Okay, here's the deal. Security is going to be so tight this year, so if you don't know for sure that you're on the list, DM me, like for sure. Follow me on Instagram, then DM me to make sure I get it. But Jeff was at, and Rashida were at Uncle Nearest house on the Vineyard, and he said, you know what? You should kick off your book tour at the National Press Club. I was like, that sounds like a really badass move. So thank you, Jeff.
We try to execute as many badass moves as we can.
We like it.
At the National Press Club. Well, Fawn, I read your book, Love and Whiskey. I knew the Uncle Nearest brand before. Yeah. I did not realize the depth of the story, the love story that you have for Uncle Nearest, the legacy, and just the time that you took on to really tell his story, the story of Lynchburg, the story of black and white relations, and just this lost story about one of, if not the most famous whiskey brand of all time, at least until, of course, Uncle Nearest takes it over. But the book is also a story about yourself and your path through life. And you're very candid in it, which I completely applaud you for as a journalist, because you start off by acknowledging that when you were 15, your parents sat you down, and basically as a result of that conversation, you decided to leave home. You were homeless for a number of years. And I'm curious, just to start at the beginning, what happened during those 3 years that you think helped shape you to be the person that you are today?
So for anyone who doesn't know this part of the story and you've just gotten your book, by the way, if you have books that you brought with you that are not signed, while Victoria is doing her tastings, I'll run around and sign the books. So just make sure that I'll kind of go table to table and just hold up your books and I will sign them while she's doing the tastings. But for those of you who don't know this part of the story, I left home when I was 15. My parents had a surprise baby girl, one of those. My mom was 40 and she thought she was done. And so she had this surprise baby girl. Now, I am the child, and for those of you who almost everybody here is black, so you'll get this. We have an authoritarian style of parenting. Do what I say because I said it. And that works for some kids. But for me, I questioned everything. I challenged everything. Okay, you believe in the Bible, you're ministers, I get that. So explain that particular scripture to me that I read it and I see this, and the concordance says this, and you are saying this. It was those kind of challenges, and I was like 9. And so it was always very contentious because I challenged. And it just doesn't work in authoritarian households. And so when they had this new baby girl when I was 15, and they decided they really wanted to have the opportunity to raise her without her being adversely impacted by the sister who asked a lot of questions. And so they sat me down, and it was basically a typical ship up or shape out. And I really don't think I was there for another hour, because I wasn't going to change who I was. This is who I was. So when I left, where I immediately went was with girls that were from school who didn't have any rules, and they lived in Jordan Downs, home of the Grape Street Crips and Watts. And I was dating a guy in Nickerson Gardens, which is across the way, home of the bounty hunter Bloods. And I would move between those two projects, and every day, for those who don't know, during that period of time, so we're talking about 90, this has got to be 91. So it was in the middle of the deadliest war between the gangs in Los Angeles. And I would move between Jordan Downs and Nickerson Gardens like I was bulletproof. Like I just was never concerned for whatever reason. So that is a part of what built me, what shaped me. Because when I go into boardrooms and people try to be tough, I'm like, you ain't been to Jordan Downs. I am unimpressed by your tough. So it was a great shaping for me.
Mm-hmm. And when you did get to the point, and you described this really beautifully in your book, that you went out there, I think it was Covenant House, if I remember correctly, went out, you started getting jobs, and then you were just like, hold up, I'm going to start my own PR firm.
Yeah.
Which it feels like, I wasn't doing 18 years old. I was just like lucky enough if I could like throw dinner together.
Yeah.
And you decided to start a PR firm. Talk to me a little bit about that particular decision, how that went.
So we leaped, for anybody who, what she's referring to is I was in the projects for a while, and it was interesting because I felt very comfortable there. I felt very safe. And then I was at a concert one day, and this is in the book. I was at a concert one day, and the hip hop artist was performing, and there's a DJ, and the hip hop artist says, cut the music, and I'm standing, about where she's standing, and he points at me and says, we have a half-breed in the house. Now, number one, I didn't know what colorism was. Number two, I use sunscreen now, I didn't then. I was a lot darker. So the only distinguishment was the color of my eyes. And it was, we've got a half-breed. So for the very first time, I didn't feel safe. And so I left there and, different series, a little bit of couch surfing, tiny bit. And then I moved into a place called My Friend's Place, which is I literally just called, we had payphones back then. Black don't crack, but I'm a little older. And the payphones, and I literally just looked up, homeless shelters where I would go, and there's a place called My Friend's Place, and they go and they find you a place to go to. Well, the only place that was open that had a bed was Children of the Night. Children of the Night is for kids that have been human trafficked. So I hadn't been human trafficked. I never had any experience like that, but I was there. And so at Children of the Night, all of a sudden, I find myself counseling kids, and I'm a kid. But you can only stay there till you're 18. So on my 18th birthday, I moved to Covenant House. So I spent my 18th birthday at Covenant House. And one of the things that they do there is that they keep an escrow account for you. And all of the money that you make goes into the escrow account. You save $5,000 and you could get a place on your own. Back then, $5,000, by the way, was a good amount of money. And so that was the process. So the first night that we all came back, you do your resumes, all the rest of that, you go out into the world, you try to get a job. Everybody came back. We're around a campfire, and everyone is lamenting about how hard it is. They go out every day. They should give their resumes. They never get any jobs. And I sat silent because I'm 18 years old, and I came back with 4 jobs. It was in that moment that I realized I was different.
I want you to elaborate on that.
I was a
Different
high
how?
school dropout. I'm a high school dropout. I go out and I come back with 4 jobs. And there is not a single person who I was applying for that would have thought that I was a high school dropout. I learned through books. It's why when people ask me to be their mentor, I send them a list of books. Because I say, this was my mentor. Mentorship can be a crutch. We got to stop encouraging people to get mentors, by the way.
You don't think, I don't want to ask the same question again. But that's fascinating because I've never heard anyone say that before, so I am going to have to ask you to elaborate because I'm very curious to hear.
So here's the thing. When people ask for mentorship, a lot of times what they're asking is, you tell me how to do exactly what you did so that I can bypass the work. So what I do is I send them a list of books that were most helpful to me. And once they have read them, i.e. done the work, let's have a conversation. But the reason why you're asking me, and I say this very kindly, but the reason why you're asking me to be a mentor is because of where I am in life. Well, I did that by not wasting time. So I do not personally believe that people need mentors. I never had one. But I could tell you about every American Titan.
Because you read about it.
Because I read about it.
You did the research on it.
Because I did the research.
I wanted to you have such a fascinating life story. I feel like we could spend the rest of the hour talking about it, but I want to make sure that we are opening up the conversation and having a conversation with the entire room. And I know we got started a little late, so I'm going to jump ahead a little bit in your story near the start of your research. So you've read this article about Nearest Green. Your curiosity has been piqued. You convince your husband to fly out to Lynchburg for 4 days, just 4 days.
Yeah.
And you wind up really connecting with the town, with the story, to the point that you decide to buy, I believe the price in your book was either 1.4 million or 900,000. Either way, a significant amount of money in a farm there to continue to research the story. That is a huge risk, but obviously you had a huge reward. Can you talk a little bit about your thought process at the time?
Yeah, so I am a person who, from the time I was 20 years old, I've prayed the same prayer, which is, Lord, if this is the door for me, open it in such a manner that no man can close it, including myself. We self-sabotage something deep. And the other side of that prayer is, if this is not for me, close the door in such a way that no man can open it, including myself. So when a door opens for me, I have no issue going through it every single time. So we hadn't been there for a matter of hours. We're in the library. We're doing research. The eldest descendant of living descendant of Jack Daniels gets called to the library to shut it down. Now, in all fairness, I would have done the same thing, because if you remember 2016, the story that came out, the headline was pretty sensational, right? Jack Daniels embraces a hidden ingredient help from a slave. And then you have Jack with this black man next to him. Now, anybody in here who's a part of Twitter, y'all are the ones who jacked this story up. I mean, I love to tell you where it began. So Black Twitter got a hold of it. Anybody who knows Jamil Hill and Carrie Champion, so they were at the distillery, and I'm telling them this, and I said, Black Twitter, and Carrie turns to Jamil and says, that was probably you, and Jamil said it probably was. But all of a sudden, the story was not what was in the actual article, which was there was a white preacher and distiller that had been credited with teaching Jack Daniel, and it was likely his slave. That was basically the whole story. Well, very quickly, Black Twitter decided Jack Daniel was a slave owner. He hid the slave, he stole the recipe, and I was nowhere in the story, nowhere. And the sad part is that story is what ended up getting picked up all over the world. And so when I show up, you know how on VRBO you have to say who you are and give a little bit of background, right? So they knew that it was they had already Googled me, so they knew it was a New York Times bestselling author and her husband that was an executive vice president at Sony Pictures Entertainment. So it had already traveled around town that we were coming. They didn't know why. Then they get a phone call from the library saying why we were there. She got there quick. And when she came, I could see the concern in her eyes, and I love to put myself in the shoes of other people and to really understand. It's the only way, I think, to gain true empathy. And I could look in her eyes, and I said, I am not here to harm your family's legacy. I believe the press has this wrong. I believe social media has this wrong. I believe this is a story, love, honor, and respect, and I'll tell you why I believe that to be the case. But here's the deal. I write stories on love. Everything that I do is about love. It's about hope. That's what interests me. That is what I am tied to. I said, so if I do the research and I find out that Jack Daniel is not who I believe he is, and he is not a good guy, someone will come down here and they will pull the same research, because nothing that happens in the dark stays in the dark. I said, but you have my word, it will not be written by me. And she said, in that case, and she pulls out her cell phone, and she gives me the name and number of nearest Green's descendant who had been doing genealogy for 30 years on the family and every black family in Lynchburg. And then before she leaves out, she says, so you know that book that brought you here, Jack Daniel's Legacy, his biography? If somebody asks a question, I'll answer that later. She said, you know that book that brought you here, the farm where Jack grew up and nearest was Distiller? You realize that's for sale. You should buy it. Open door.
I would be remiss if I didn't point out that obviously the distillery world is not one that has a lot of black women as heads of it.
No.
At all.
No.
To the point that when you were starting out, your distiller, Sherry Moore, your senior VP of sales, Catherine Jenkins, couldn't get a call back for weeks until you had your husband start making those exact same calls to the exact same people. And not only did he get return calls, but everyone was like, we should go golfing. We should get a beer. Nothing against golf or beer, but still. I'm just kind of curious, do you think that the industry has gotten any better now that you have done what you have done?
100%.
Okay.
100%. Half of the spirit conglomerates now have women as presidents and CEOs. There was zero when I came into the industry.
And is that also true for women of color?
Well, women of color, you're still rising. When I began, the very first speaking engagement I ever gave was for a room full of craft distillers. There were 1,000 people, and 994 were white men. And there were 2 white women, both came with me. But it was literally, in this room, at the end of my talk, I have this standing ovation, and I look out, and I was like, oh my God, it is all white men. I just gave a talk to about 2,000, 2,500 people, totally different makeup. That's in 7 years.
And that was just for the distillers in the room for the second one. What do you think has led to that? I mean, is it just distilleries waking up?
It's my success. Success changes things. People try to reverse engineer, and when they can't figure it out, they do the one thing they know. She's a black woman. Let's hire black women. I don't care how you come to the conclusion. Let's just do it. But that is how the change happens, is they look at it and they're trying to reverse engineer, and they do the pieces that they can see. So a part of why I am so visible is because I want them to see this and to see how, everybody in here will laugh at this, articulate we are. That's our code word.
I didn't say it. I'm not going to say it. No.
But it's helpful for them to see how articulate we are and how well we conduct ourselves in the boardroom, but also what they miss out on.
And it wasn't just the fact that you were a black woman, but also the way that you marketed Uncle Nearest broke the mold. That usually for distilleries, they say start off in 1 or 2 states. You did not do that. Can you talk a little bit about the process that you did, and if you're now starting to see that being replicated?
Yes. So we broke several molds. The first mold that we broke is that we opted to market to everyone. So anyone that's from the marketing world, for a very long time, I think we're starting to see that shift. But when we came in, and it's been this way historically, is everyone will say, you must have a demo. You must have a demographic. You can't market to everybody, you have a demo. So coming in, the bourbon industry only marketed to white men. that was their demo, white men of a certain age. And so that had always been the demo, because the thought process was, well, we can't market outside of our demo. So then vodka had a certain demo, everyone had a certain demo. And I came in and I said, well, if I'm good enough for that group, I'm good enough for every group. We're going to market to everyone. And the thought process is, well, you can't really afford to market it to everyone. Yeah, you can. All you have to do is make the message something that hits across every single group of people. Don't make it specific. There are certain through lines that I don't care what race, what background, political affiliation, religion, there's certain through lines that we can all relate to. And so if you look at all the marketing for Uncle Nearest from day one, there has been a through line that has been for everyone. That was definitely breaking the mold, and yes, everybody has copied that. In our industry, it was prevalent that no one really entered competitions because competitions didn't move the needles. It did for wine, but it didn't for spirits. And so I was told by industry experts, it doesn't, like, submitting your bourbon for competitions, it doesn't matter, consumers don't care about it. And I said, well, consumers may not care about a competition, but if we become the most awarded, they will care. That is why Uncle Nearest is the most awarded bourbon in the world 5 years running. So now, I don't know if y'all have noticed, but there's a whole lot of bourbon, a whole lot of billboards with the most awarded tequila, most awarded liqueur, most awarded, everybody's most awarded. Ain't nobody else most awarded bourbon though. And so that was also a mold breaking. And then the other one was the distributors and how we chose to do it. And usually coming in, distributors, it's a very interesting thing. And I have distributors in here, and I'm always very honest with our distributors. And the reality is we can't sell directly to the press club, Uncle Nearest. We can't sell directly to you. When you go into a bar, a restaurant, we can't sell directly to those. We have to go through a second tier. That makes it one of the most difficult businesses to succeed in because we have no full control over our business. There's an entire party that separates us from our consumer. Nobody else has that. We have that, right? So coming into it, I said, let me get this straight. So there has never been a woman or a person of color to succeed in an industry in a country that is 70% women and people of color. There's a problem. What's the problem? Oh, the whole distributor tier is white male. Oh, every spirit conglomerate makes up about 90% of the sales in this country, all founded by, led by, run by white men. Okay, so then we are not going to have a national distributor, which is what we've always done. So we will have 17. So DMV, why are you being outperformed by Texas? Georgia, why are you being outperformed by, name a random city? And so we were able to create competition amongst them. So they were never able to say to me, well, the product isn't selling because there isn't a consumer base for it, or the product isn't selling because there isn't demand for it. There was never able to have that conversation where I go, oh, but wait, this state in which you don't represent me is selling the product just fine. That was unheard of. No one had ever done that. Not a woman or a person of color.
I'm going to ask one more barrier-breaking question, which is telling simply the story, right? The love story of Uncle Nearest, what he gave, the relationship between him and Jack Daniel. Yeah. And as you note in your book, Jack Daniel Distillery, you would go there for tours, there would be no mention of Uncle Nearest, despite the fact that he was basically the first master distiller. Have you begun to see other brands step up, acknowledge their past, acknowledge the contributions of folks who are being overlooked, and begin to integrate them into their stories?
They don't know how. They don't know how. So if you think about it this way, nobody else could have told this story that wasn't a person of color. So you have at the top and the leadership across the board, they're not people of color. They can't tell this story. They can't tell our story. And so when I came into this, it's a huge blessing for Jack Daniel. Let me tell you something. Let me tell you something about the story of how we came to have a great relationship with Brown-Forman, the parent company of Jack Daniel. And there are probably Jack Daniel, Brown-Forman people in here. How we came to have a great relationship is it was tumultuous to begin with, and some of that is in the book. It was a challenge. They had a civil war in their company. Half of the company believed that this was great, that this story was coming out. Half the company wanted us dead, like legit throwing grenades every single time they could get. So they had this civil war going in, and y'all remember Enemy of the State, Will Smith? I was Will under the table. I was like, I'm just gonna let you all battle it out, and I'm gonna stay under here until there's a victor, and we'll figure out what that was. But the moment that it really changed is after a couple of years of just this challenging back and forth, difficult, cordial, but challenging. I pulled up their stock for the prior 11 years, in which it was essentially flat. Would go up a little bit, but not enough to be able to see with the naked eye. Like 11 years, flat. I did my first interview on July 19th, 2017, taking Jack Daniel from being a brand on a bottle to a man who was an incredible human being, possibly the first American ally for Black people, a philanthropist, and I began to tell the story of Jack that they did not know. On July 26th, their stock shot up, and it continued to go up like a hockey stick till on the other side of COVID. I sent them a screenshot, and I said, you're welcome. We've had a great relationship ever since.
And I would definitely encourage, if you have not already read the book, the entire Brown-Forman and Fawn, how you handle it, how you think about things. It feels like a chess game where you are like already 20 steps ahead.
No.
It is.
They were playing chess, I was playing Go.
And you won.
I wouldn't say I won, I was playing a different game. So I grabbed territory.
Yeah.
That's what we do in Go.
Well, I won't spoil too much of it for it. And I also know that it's very important to you, and I'm very much looking forward to this, to really open up the conversation to the room, to those who have questions for Fawn. So
yes.
I believe that we have someone with a mic. I see a mic being raised in the back from Cecily, who's in the green blazer.
Okay, so we're gonna do this, sorry, Emily.
No?
She's so proper, she's CNBC. I'm a little more hood. So we're gonna do this a little different. I'm gonna stand. There is no moderating, there is no, you ask what you wanna ask. It could be from the book, it could be about marriage, it could be about background, it could be about any random thing about life, but here's the thing. People say there's no such thing as a bad question. That is a lie. We know the difference between a bad question and a good question. So if you are going to ask a question, please do not make it a dissertation. If you get to the 20-second mark and I don't hear a what, why, who, how, if there isn't a formation of a question, I am going to cut you off. Okay, are we fair? Is this fair? I'm going to answer questions completely unfiltered, but y'all got to ask good questions. They can be deep, they can be whatever you want them to be. Just make them good. Are we good with that? Okay, but wait, are we serving food?
So what we're gonna do,
because I can answer questions while you are eating.
No.
I'm not bothered by that.
here's what we're gonna do. I know we got started a little bit late.
Okay.
How about this? We do about 15 minutes of questions,
okay.
and we finally let folks break into that delicious bourbon that has been sitting in front of them, teasing them the entire time. We'll start getting food out of here. We'll bring in Victoria.
Yeah. No, we have to. We don't drink on empty stomachs.
All right.
I'm sorry.
Food is out in less than 5.
Food is out in less than 5. Okay, so we are not.
Like,
so let me give you all a secret for any of you that do not know this. The way that you keep from getting drunk is you do not drink on an empty stomach. Okay. So the Press Club was literally created for people to come together and to drink.
And gamble.
And gamble. I am all about drink honorably. We are representing the life and legacy of Nearest Green. I don't want to see anybody drunk on Uncle Nearest. So we're going to have food on your belly first.
So
And
we'll
then-
do 5 minutes of questions.
Sure.
And then I have a little thing for you before I depart the stage. And
Okay.
we'll bring out the food, and we'll get Victoria into the mix, and she will
Okay.
walk you through the amazing
Yes.
dinner that we have planned.
Y'all, please give it up for Miss Emily. Thank you.
I don't have to do anything
Thank
for you got it. You got it.
Well, I am grateful because Jeff introduced it, but she still had to sign off on it as the current president, so thank you.
It was really difficult to say yes to this. It was so hard.
All right. Question 1. Blue shirt went up first.
Awesome. Thank you, and it's an honor to meet you. I'm gonna start with my how. How influential can we be as consumers when we go into restaurants and bars and ask for Uncle Nearest and it's not in stock?
Let me tell you something. Remember when I said that the distributor tier has always controlled everything? And that's not going to change. I'm not even fighting to make it change. This is just the way our system is, and I have learned to work around that type of thing. But a distributor cannot say no when a restaurant or a bar says bring in Uncle Nearest. So this is where people in this room have been so unbelievably key in building this brand, is that you would walk into places and ask for Uncle Nearest and they'd say we don't serve it, and you'd walk out. Do you know how much that moves the needle for us? And so I'm not saying walk out if they don't have Uncle Nearest. But Victoria said, I'm saying it. But this has been, Uncle Nearest is the only independent that you can find in well over 100 national accounts. So y'all go to this Prime Ocean right here. I feel like everybody goes to the Prime Ocean that's around the corner. That's a national account. And I mean, they slang a lot of Uncle Nearest in there, and we're so grateful. But usually when you are a independent, you're not with one of the big guys, you can't get national accounts because they're the ones who control the national accounts. Except when you have rooms like this with so much power that they're able to go in and say, no, you're gonna have to bring in an Uncle Nearest. So I will tell you, the way that we built the coalition of investors, people who have read the story a little bit, if you read in magazines, I've raised over $260 million. I don't have a single VC or PE in my company. It's all individuals. It's all powerful individuals. It's all wealthy, high net worth individuals. And so what they would do, I call him my sixth man. One of my sixth man is here, Jim Free. Thank you, Jim. Jim is one of our early investors. Jim Free of the Smith Free Group. And what they will do is they would go into a restaurant or a bar, drop their $2,500 on that dinner as they normally would, call over the manager or general manager and say, I want you to see how much this bill was. I will not spend this again until you bring in Uncle Nearest. That's power. That's power. Smith & Wolinski, which is one of our national accounts, the one in Chicago, we have a bunch of six men who would go in there, and they got Uncle Nearest brought in. They would go in there. The problem is they would drink all the Uncle Nearest they got brought in. So it never shared with anybody else. And they would come in. But here's the thing. They were there so much that we ended up in all the Smith & Wolinski national account, all of them nationally. Smith & Wolinski was the first place. They had 3 Uncle Nearest cocktails on their menu at the same time. So it is power. It is pure power. Like these 2 tables here, I am going to guess these are my distributors because it's a lot of white men in suits. Am I guessing right? Exactly. So here's the thing. This is what I will say, and I will shout you all out. This is the power. Is Lax in here? Okay. So let me tell you the power of people. So, and this is not a knock on y'all. Y'all didn't know who I was, and you didn't know much about the brand. But y'all were moving really slow on bringing in DC. Like really, really slow. Thank you. Thank you. The distributors are behind you, though. Thank you. Listen, any white guy in a suit, I'm assuming tonight is a distributor. I am so sorry. So I'm going to come to you actually next because this answers this. The Fairmont has been so unbelievably supportive of us. So unbelievably supportive. Thank you. So LAX, when DC, RNDC, Republic, would not bring us in, they'd say, yeah, we're going to bring you in, we're going to bring you in. 6 months went by. They didn't bring us in. So Lax and I meet at the Mastro's here, and he says, so tell me how do I get your product? And I said, well, RNDC won't bring us in. He was like, what do you mean RNDC won't bring us in? Now, Lax is the biggest volume player in the DMV, I would venture to say. And he's like, what do you mean they won't bring in your product? I said, they said they're going to bring it in at some point. Sitting there at that table, he made a phone call, and he said, I want a pallet of Uncle Nearest tomorrow. Guess what state brought in Uncle Nearest? That is the power of people and an individual. So it is a huge deal. When you go into places, if you do not see Uncle Nearest, please ask for it. And if they don't have it, please don't drink another bourbon.
Fawn?
It matters to them.
Nope, sorry.
Go ahead.
I want you to finish your thought.
Go for it.
But I thought that was a perfect spot to bring in dinner. But before we
Perfect.
did, are
Yes.
you done? I want to make sure
I
you're
can
all
talk,
done.
and they can serve at the same
is
time.
True. That is a good point.
I'm not concerned about it.
Well, before I roll out, this is the mug for the National Press Club. We give it to ambassadors, to heads of state, to celebrities, and I am so honored to be giving it to one of 5 Black women who built a $1 billion business from scratch. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I got the mug.